You know how they say some battles start small, like over a parking spot or a trash can? Well, this one started with a dog fence. My name's Daniel Carter, and I live in the quiet little neighborhood of Maplewood Estates. At least, it was supposed to be quiet. I had just adopted a rescue dog, Bailey, a Labrador mix, who loved running around, but I couldn't let her roam free because of traffic and some not-so-friendly neighbors. So I decided to install a simple wooden fence in my backyard. Nothing fancy, just a modest structure to keep Bailey safe. The fence went up in one weekend. I hired a local handyman, spent about $1,200 total, and honestly, I was proud of it. It matched the look of the house and gave Bailey the space she needed. But the very next morning, a letter appeared in my mailbox. Violation notice, unauthorized fence installation, daily fine of $100 until removed or replaced with HOA-approved fencing. At first I laughed. This had to be a mistake, right? My fence wasn't some neon eyesore. It was literally wood, stained brown, blending in with everything else. But then I noticed the signature at the bottom, Patricia Holloway, HOA president. If you've ever had an HOA president who treats the neighborhood like her personal kingdom, you already know the type. Patricia wasn't just strict, she was obsessive. The kind of person who measured your grass with a ruler and carried a clipboard like it was a sword. I walked over to her house, letter in hand. "Patricia," I said, trying to be polite, "what's this about? My fence isn't hurting anyone." She adjusted her pearls and smirked. "Daniel, all fences must be approved. Yours is not. If you don't remove it, fines will continue to accrue daily. Of course, there's always the option of hiring an approved contractor." Something in the way she said approved set off alarm bells in my head, but at the time I figured maybe this was just HOA red tape. I decided to let it go for the moment. That was my first mistake. Because by the end of the month, my little fence issue had turned into a $3,000 problem, and it was only just beginning. The fine stacked up like a nightmare. Every single day, another $100 charge. I called, I emailed, I even attended the next HOA meeting to appeal the decision. Patricia sat at the head of the table, smiling smugly while the rest of the board nodded along with her every word. "Rules are rules, Mr. Carter," she said, cutting me off. "If you had followed the proper procedures, you wouldn't be in this mess." I clenched my jaw. "So what's the procedure then? How do I make this right?" She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a single business card, Maplewood Fencing Solutions, our only approved contractor. I raised an eyebrow. "Only one?" She folded her hands, her smile never fading. "Yes, they meet our quality standards." Later that night, I looked up Maplewood Fencing Solutions. No website, no reviews, just a phone number. When I called, the man on the other end quoted me $12,000 for a fence nearly identical to the one I already had. I almost dropped the phone. "This has to be a mistake," I said. "No mistake," the man replied flatly. "We're the only contractor approved by your HOA. You want the fines to stop? You hire us." My gut twisted. Something smelled rotten. Who charges $12,000 for a wooden fence? I asked around the neighborhood, and sure enough, several residents had been forced to use the same company after receiving fines. And every single one of them mentioned the same name, Gary Holloway, Patricia's brother. It all clicked. The fines weren't about quality standards, they were about money. Patricia and her brother had created a monopoly. The HOA would reject any unapproved fence, fine the homeowner into submission, and then funnel them straight into Gary's overpriced company. I felt sick, but I also felt angry. And anger has a way of pushing you into action. By week 6, my fines had reached nearly $7,000. Patricia delivered another letter, this time warning that if I didn't comply, the HOA could place a lien on my home. That's when I knew I had to fight back. I started digging. First stop, the county clerk's office. Public records are powerful, and sure enough, I found documents tying Maplewood Fencing Solutions directly to Gary Holloway. Even better, I discovered that Patricia herself had voted, without disclosing her conflict of interest, to approve Maplewood as the sole contractor for fences in our neighborhood. That wasn't just shady, it was potentially illegal. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed allies, so I went door to door talking to neighbors. At first, most were hesitant. Nobody wanted to cross Patricia. She was known for targeting anyone who stood up to her. Extra inspections, bogus fines, the works. But then I met the Johnsons, an elderly couple who had paid nearly $15,000 for Gary's fence. They were furious but too intimidated to speak up. And the Ramirez family, who had been fined so heavily they almost lost their home. One by one, the stories piled up. I compiled everything into a binder: invoices, HOA meeting minutes, county records. Then I brought it to the next HOA meeting. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, standing before the board, "I think we've all had enough of these games. I have proof that our HOA president has been profiting off our fines through her brother's company. This isn't about community standards. This is corruption." Patricia's face went pale, then red. She slammed her gavel. "Out of order! Out of order!" But the room was buzzing. Neighbors leaned forward, whispering to each other, eyes narrowing at Patricia. For the first time, I saw cracks in her perfect facade. "Fine," she snapped, trying to regain control. "If you think you have a case, take it to court. But remember, fines continue until your fence is removed." Her arrogance was staggering, but she just made a mistake. She dared me to take it legal. And that's exactly what I planned to do. I hired an attorney, a tough bulldog of a man named Richard Cole, who specialized in HOA abuse cases. He looked over my binder and shook his head. "This isn't just unethical, it's racketeering. We're going to bury them." The lawsuit hit Patricia like a thunderclap. Suddenly, the same neighbors who had stayed silent began stepping forward as witnesses. The Johnsons, the Ramirez family, even a former board member who admitted Patricia pressured him into voting for Maplewood Fencing Solutions. In court, Patricia tried to play the victim. She claimed the rules were about maintaining community integrity. But under cross-examination, Richard tore her apart. He showed the judge bank transfers between Maplewood Fencing and Patricia's personal account. He highlighted how the HOA bylaws had been manipulated under her watch. The judge's ruling was swift and brutal. Patricia was removed as HOA president, effective immediately. The HOA was ordered to refund thousands of dollars in fines to homeowners. And Patricia and her brother Gary were fined heavily for fraud and conflict of interest. As for me, my $10,000 in fines vanished overnight. My fence stayed exactly where it was. Bailey still runs happily in the backyard every morning. But the best part wasn't keeping my fence. It was watching Patricia, who once strutted around with her clipboard like a queen, forced to pack up her pearls and leave the neighborhood in shame. Maplewood Estates finally got its peace back. And the next time someone mentions HOA drama, I just smile and say, "Let me tell you about the time my dog's fence took down a corrupt president." Don't forget to like and subscribe.